Today I am joined by a baseball great, a Hall of Famer, a Miami native, Mr. Dawson. How are you?
I'm doing real well, thank you.
I'm so excited to talk to you. It's an honor to be in the same room as you, let alone conducting an interview. So I thank you so much for your time today.
It's my distinct pleasure. You're welcome.
Thank you. South Florida is known to breed elite talent, and you're a testament to that. Antonio Brown, Frank Gore, Udonis Haslam, Michael Irvin. But way before those guys came on the scene, there was Dawson, the Hawk. How did you find baseball growing up in Miami?
Actually, I was introduced to the game by an uncle of mine. He was a Parks and Recreation director, and he started a Little League baseball program. And he bought me my very first fielder's glove, and I just fell in love with the game itself. And I can recall only wanting to just play baseball.
Now, was this uncle the one who gave you the name the Hawk?
No, that was actually a different uncle. I think I was in the way more than anything because it was a men's travel team that was out practicing. And I would watch, and at the end of practice, they'll invite me over. They hit me some ground balls. And if the ball took a bad hop and ricocheted off of a certain part of my body, I'd pounce on it. And he made the comment that, for a kid your age, you're not really afraid of the baseball. And if anything, you just jump on it like a hawk. And for whatever reason, that name stuck, but that wasn't my family name. My family name was Pudgy.
Pudgy?
Pudgy. I don't know why, because I was never a fat kid. So all of those years, the nickname Hawk stuck with me. And for whatever reason, people thought that it was because of that intense focus that I had on the playing field. But for me, it was a form of concentration.
Now, you're the oldest of 8, and that number will come up repeatedly in your future. The number 8 has great significance. But being the oldest, is that when you would say you first stepped into a role of leadership?
Oh my God. I mean, you talk about old school leadership. Not like today. I had the responsibility of making sure that, because my mom at times would work late, so I had the responsibility of my siblings getting home from school, starting their homework. I can go on and on. I had to wash dishes as a form of getting my lunch money for school the next day, to make sure that they took their baths. And if they got in trouble, they weren't in trouble, I was in trouble. So yes, I had a huge responsibility very early on, but I enjoyed it, because I got the opportunity to, I think, raise them in a sense the way I saw appropriate, with the blessings of my mother, of course. But I made sure that I kept them out of trouble because I didn't want to get in trouble.
Oftentimes in the Black community, you hear people say that they want to play football or basketball. What made you attracted to the sport of baseball so early then?
Well, back then, it was a Bible school. You could afford to play. Unlike today where, you have the showcases and so on and so forth, and you really can't, the sport itself is practically unaffordable when it comes to the urban community because of equipment, travel teams. We as a collective group had the pleasure of having the parks have this sort of recreation available to us. And you could play it, in a sense, not year-round, but you could play it almost half a year. And it just made me further want to dive into it as much as possible.
So you attend family yourself. You become a rattler, the highest of 7 hills, as they like to say. What was your college experience like?
Well, I got hurt playing high school football, so I didn't get a scholarship offer. My grandmother was always not opposed to me playing sports, but she was an advocate of education. She said that's what's going to get you to where you need to be in life. 3 of my uncles attended FAMU. So I went to FAMU knowing that I was damaged goods because of the knee injury. and I tried out for the team as a walk-on. And I made the team as a walk-on. Then I made the starting lineup as a freshman. And from there, it was pretty much history. That's the only incentive I needed to get through the 3 years that I was there. And I look back at that, and they gave me that opportunity. And I always grew up just wanting the opportunity. Not against the wishes of my grandmother, but I went to A&M to get my education first, but knowing that baseball was going to be something that was on the back burner, and if I was good enough at it, maybe, just maybe, I would get drafted, and that's how it all turned out.
What do you remember about draft night?
Well, I recall going to a workout, first of all, in West Palm Beach for the Montreal Expos. The scouts came to me and said, well, if things fall into place as we think they might, you'll be hearing from us in about a week. And sure enough, the draft was a week later. I got the call from the Montreal Expos. They had selected me in the 11th round of the June 1975 draft.
Why were your eyes set on the Expos?
Well, it wasn't really the Expos. The Expos just invited me to that tryout.
Mm-hmm.
All of the teams would have had the option to draft me. But I was informed by a scout who would go and watch a lot of the Florida State games that a lot of teams weren't going across the railroad tracks scouting the Rattlers per se.
Right.
And so with that, it was kind of like I wasn't really that well known, and I was still in my junior year. So he felt that because of that, that maybe I would slip through the cracks, and people may not notice until the following year. But Montreal did send a scout over, and he was pretty impressed. I thought I would probably, if I was going to get drafted, I would have gone a little bit earlier. But because I said I really wasn't known,
right,
that was one of the reasons why I went late.
right.
So Montreal was just a team that saw me and happened to take the opportunity to draft me.
So being in Tallahassee and family, was that your first time being away from home?
Yeah, I was homesick
Yes.
as ever. My uncle, who was there, he was taking courses postgraduate, and he said to me, he said, I know what you're feeling, so I'm going to fly you back home and let you spend the next 3 days at home. Sure enough, knowing that I had to come back on a Sunday, I think this was a Thursday, and as excited as I was when I got back home, I was like, okay, what did I really miss? And when I was able to fly back to Tallahassee, it was all out of my system. I wasn't homesick anymore. And then I was ready to move on and move forward.
So you're drafted by Montreal. How does a Miami boy from the bottom of the map transition all the way to the top of the map?
It was horrible initially. Change in weather, first of all. It reminded me of sort of an upscale New York City. A lot of people, but a lot more cleanliness going on and friendliness. And I look at that, I was there for 10 years, but it gave me the opportunity to play across the border and learn a little bit about that culture. And I look back on that, and it was an experience that I always cherished because it gave me my start initially, and I was able to do real well there.
So you spent a very short amount of time with the minor leagues, but then you're called upon by the Expos. You made your debut September 11th, 1976. So what's going through your head? Are you like, this is it, this is what all those childhood practices were for?
I'm thinking on the flight there, wow, this day is about to really actually occur. I met the team, they were in Pittsburgh, playing the Pirates. And I was inserted into the lineup my very first day upon arrival.
Wow.
So I'm thinking, well, now how do I hold my own at this level? Well, I didn't get a hit the very first game, and we were there. I met the team, and they were at the end of that particular series, and then we were flying from Pittsburgh to Philadelphia. And I got to start again the very next night, and I got my very first major league hit against a future Hall of Famer by the name of Steve Carlton. And took a big sigh of relief, and I was excited, of course. But I can recall finishing up that month, having started every game because the team wanted to really give me a serious look when it came to the end of the season, because they had plans of bringing me to spring training and giving me an opportunity to win a job outright and break camp with the club the following year. So it was an exciting time for me. Montreal was very cold. I was like,
I can imagine.
yeah, it was very cold during the month of September, but you kind of put that on the back burner and it's in the back of your mind because now you're where you want to be, and playing is first and foremost.
Right. So you played your first full season with the Expos in 1977. I'm gonna rattle off these stats. Your batting average was .282, 19 home runs, 65 RBIs, and 21 stolen bases, and you win the National League Rookie of the Year. So you're a Miami guy. Miami people are cocky. Are you feeling yourself at this point, or are you humble? Like, how are you feeling? Like you're just about to take the league by storm?
Well, no, I could never ever venture the route of being cocky because that wasn't a part of my makeup growing up. And I was always, it was made sure that I would be grounded because, for one, I was told, don't you ever forget where you came from. But I can remember hitting my first home run in Atlanta Fulton County Stadium, and that kind of got things going for me. As you mentioned, I went on ahead and I won the Rookie of the Year award. And I was like, okay, the minor leagues was not difficult at all. For me, it was pretty much similar to college baseball, but with a little bit better pitching. And the major leagues was the cream of the cream, man. It was tough. But I had made the adjustment in all of a year. And my attitude was, well, hopefully I've arrived and I've been given an ample opportunity to get my feet underneath me. So now let's see where we go from here.
So in 1981 and 1983, you finished second in MVP voting. But at this point, you already have 4 Gold Gloves and 3 All-Star appearances. Are you frustrated with coming in second in MVP voting twice?
Well, actually, one of those years, I was voted the top player in the game, and that was voted amongst your peers. And that kind of really struck me as, okay, I had arrived. I really felt that I wouldn't win an MVP award playing across the border, playing in Montreal, because you don't really get that kind of recognition. And I just felt that at some point, well, maybe, just maybe it will happen. But I spent 10 years in Montreal, and of course it didn't happen. But I just gradually started to continue to see the climb in my ability. And for me, I just said, well, I'm going to just try to be as consistent a player as possible. And now I start to set goals as to how long I want to play. And with that in mind, all of the prestige, the awards, everything is going to take care of itself.
1984 is deep as your down year. It's when you were moved from center field to right field, and it was said that the turf was beginning to take a toll on your knees. Were you frustrated with that constant nagging pain of your knees? And also, was that position change your idea or the coach's?
Well, I think it was a collective decision by management because playing center field demands a little bit more wear and tear, running that is, and the AstroTurf in Montreal was brutal. And I looked at it as probably a game changer for me because by moving to right field, they were aware that I could make the throw to third base from right field, but they really wanted to lessen the running aspect of it. So I was all in. I bought all in for it. No, I wasn't frustrated. I was angry in a sense because now the wear and tear of the turf is starting to affect not only the bad knee, but the other knee. And I look back during my playing time in Montreal, and I think I had probably about 10 different procedures. And in the end, when I was there at the end of year 10, and I'm like, this is pretty much taking its toll, and I'm not going to be able to continue at the pace I want to play at in the future if, I don't make a change.
Right. So now it's 1986, and so far you finished second in the National League MVP voting twice. You won Rookie of the Year. You now have 6 Gold Gloves, 4 All-Star appearances, and you've been setting franchise records for the Expos. So now it's time to get paid. Are you thinking that you're about to get this huge superstar contract?
Funny as it may sound, I went into year 10 knowing that I was going to be a free agent. But I saw myself being dangled in trade rumors. And I was like, wow. So this is what being a free agent entails. And that went on, of course, during the course of the season. And the trade rumors never manifested. It was time for the organization to sit down and talk contract.
Mm-hmm.
But I was confronted with a pay cut as a proposal. And now that really kind of opened my eyes, because I said, no, this isn't going to work. Not after 10 years, and I finally have leverage. And they took a stance because what was going on at the present was collusion. And collusion was teams weren't going to negotiate with you fair market value. You're going to have to re-sign with your original club. So they felt that they could offer me whatever, and I couldn't refuse it because I wasn't going to go with another ball club. Well, I took a stance. I said, it's not going to happen. I said, if I have to play for a cut and pay, it's going to be somewhere where I'm going to play. And I took that stance. They held their ground. I met with the president of baseball operations during the off season, and he wanted to know if I had a change of heart. Their offer still stood. And I said, no, absolutely not. I said, I have an idea of what I want to do. I just want to thank you for the last 10 years. The writing pretty much is on the wall. It's time for me to move on. And I would just close that chapter in my career. And not realizing how I was going to make that happen, or what was going to present itself the next year if I was still going to be in Major League Baseball. There were other options. There were a possibility of going to Japan and playing, but my wife looked at me and she said, leave Japan, I'll see you when you get back. So I kind of knew that, well, that was out of the window. So I didn't really know what was going to happen, but I just felt that my better baseball was still years ahead of me. And it's just a matter of getting to the place where I wanted to be and having that opportunity present itself.
Better baseball was definitely on the horizon for you. You and your agent, you can look down to Chicago with a blank contract and tell them whatever is fair that you will sign with them. How bold and how risky is that?
The general manager at the time, Dallas Green, he looked sort of stunned because he didn't know what to make of it. He said, I've never seen, what is this? I don't like the likes of it. He said, I need to let my legal people look it over. And I said, fine. I said, Mr. Green, I said, I'm going to leave it on the table for 24 hours, and I'm going to West Palm Beach, and I'm going to do the same thing with the Atlanta Braves. I said, well, you fill in what you feel you can pay me to become a Chicago Cub. And if, it's feasible for you, okay. And he looked at me and said, well, he said, I have younger players that I need to give an opportunity to, and a look. He said, I will let my legal team look it over and I will get back to you. Of course, I flew back to Miami, and the very next day, he telephoned me and he said, I know he was just here, he said, and I reviewed everything, and the best offer that we could make you was $500,000. And that was $500,000 less than what Montreal was offering. And I knew that I could always go back to Montreal still, but I said, Mr. Green, I said, I was man enough to present that to you. I'll accept it. And he got quiet. He didn't say anything for about 15 seconds. And I said, hello? I thought that I'd actually lost the call. But he said, I'm still here. He said, can I call you back in about an hour? And I knew what he had to do from that standpoint because he really wasn't supposed to make me an offer. And his offer that he made was for me to turn down. But once I accepted it, now he has to call the commissioner and he has to get clearance with the commissioner because, well, he wasn't supposed to make me an offer.
Do you have any regrets with that approach that you took, being that it was a pay cut?
No, not at all. I went out to Arizona and I didn't really feel my way around because I felt I had 10 years of experience behind me. So I knew what it took to feel like you fitted in. And the fans embraced me right away for the simple reason that I went that route just to get to Chicago. And I can recall opening day in Wrigley Field, how they were salaaming me. And they started Andre's Army out in right field. And every day that I would run to my position, they would bow to me. And I was like, wow. So this is what I have to look forward to each and every day.
So with the exposure, we're number 10, but with the Cubs comes number 8. Who was behind that decision and changing your number? Was that you, or because you accomplished a lot with the number 10? So why the change to number 8?
Throughout high school, college, and in the minor leagues, I was number 8. And once I got to the major leagues, there was a player that had one more year of experience at that level. That was number 8. And that was a good friend of mine, Gary Carter. He was a catcher. So number 8 was already taken. And I opted for number 10. So I wear number 10 the entirety of my Expos career. And when now I'm the Chicago Cub, number 8 is available. So I make the switch back to number 8. I wore number 10 for 2 years in Boston. And my last 2 years, I'm with the Florida Marlins. So I wore 2 numbers. It just depended on where I was playing and at what time.
1987 is recognized as your best season. You led the National League with 59 home runs, 137 RBIs, 353 total bases, and a batting average of .287. You earned your first Gold Glove as a Cub, and you finally earned the National League MVP award. Was this success a get back at the Expos? Was it fueled by that?
It was a career year. It was a dream year. Funny, because not being aware of actually where I was going to be, something happened that I looked back on. I didn't really set goals for the first time. I lost my grandmother. She succumbed to Alzheimer's disease, and I was a little saddened during that part of the year, and it was during the off season. And when I did sign with the Cubs, I just said I'm going to dedicate the year to her on her behalf, and I'm not going to set any goals for the first time. So I went out, and I was just playing the game a little bit more freely and having as much fun as I could. I was not pressuring myself in any way, fashion, form. I just looked at it like it's a new beginning for me. These people love me. And just go out and enjoy yourself, have fun.
What did you enjoy about being with the Boston Red Sox?
Well, when I was with the Boston Red Sox, I had come up to free agency status again in Chicago. And in Chicago, we ran into a similar situation with new management. And that is they want to renegotiate with me, but on their terms. And I was offered a contract that I really didn't show a lot of concern for. And, well, I could have signed it, but I still had the opportunity to experience free agency and go back. And I saw that there was a lot of interest from Boston. It was a different league. It was the American League, something I wasn't accustomed to. But they were willing to reward me with the biggest contract of my entire playing career. So that's something you really can't turn your heads to. And I said, well, this is just the route that I have to go. It's only going to be for 2 years, but, it's very lucrative.
1995, you returned back to the home state, a Florida boy. How excited were you to get back to this warm weather?
I was actually going to retire. And I got a call from the general manager of the Florida Marlins at the time, Mr. Dave Dombrowski. He said, we're looking to bring in a veteran presence in the clubhouse, someone that can be a mentor to the younger players. He said it doesn't involve a great deal of money, which was $500,000. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, well, Mr. Dombrowski, I'm actually really considering retiring. And he said, I understand. He said, think it over. And if you change your mind, let me know. And I actually did. I went through the off season just saying that I'm basically going to retire. And I thought about it. I said, well, I'm not going to have to play every day. I can sleep in my own bed. I kind of said, you know what, I get the opportunity now to let my family see me on an everyday basis. And I'm around friends that can come out and see me play. This has never happened before. I said, well, maybe, it's not all that bad. And I took him up on the offer. I called him and he said, thank you. And I signed to play that year. Sure enough, thinking I'm going to retire the next year. What happens in the offseason? He called and said, I want you to come back one more year. And I'm like, wow. I'm like, well, let me check with the wife and see, what she thinks. And she was like, hey, get out of here. So I told him, say, okay, I'll come back and play one more year. And I was able to finish my career here at home, playing 2 years.
Do you think the number 8 was predestined for you? You're the oldest of 8 All-Star appearances, 8 Gold Gloves, and your success with the Chicago Cubs, you were ranked number 8. Do you think that number was just meant to be for you?
I think it weighs a lot of precedence on a lot of things that transpired in my career, in my life. And I can't really attest to what it is actually, but at the very outset, it was always, for whatever reason, I saw that number and I took a special liking to it. And as you mentioned, so many things happened from that in that regard. Whether it was predestined, I don't know. But I enjoyed the aspect of wearing the number and letting that number represent me.
There's been a lot of hypothetical talk in the world of sports, the world of baseball, about what type of numbers you would have put up if your knees were fully healthy. And even with them being a bit impaired, you still set amazing records. Does it bother you that you set high numbers authentically, and in the steroid era, people were being dishonest in setting records?
Well, I look at a difference in how the game was played when I was present, the players before me, the players after me, the steroid era, and I just look at it as a lot of selfishness first and foremost, because of what that represented and entailed. It was done basically to garnish the huge contracts. And in essence, yes, you cheated the game, you changed the history of the game. And it's going to really reflect going forward how players in different eras view you. So I look back on it, no, I don't condone what it is they did. But I do feel that it's a game that is played. The game doesn't change. Players change. You don't change how you play the game. Players do change. And during the steroid era, it was a very, very bad blackout for the game itself, and it did change the game in a sense.
Your final stats were 438 home runs, 1,591 RBIs, 2,774 hits, 314 stolen bases, 1,373 runs scored. You are just one of 3 players in baseball history with more than 400 home runs and 300 stolen bases. You joined Willie Mays and Barry Bonds. Are you proud of those numbers?
I just wanted to be as consistent, if not better than that. When I was out on the playing field, I wanted to play it until it was time for me to give the uniform back, as opposed to have it taken away. So I look at my accomplishments and my accolades. What I'm most proud of is that I represented the uniform the right way. I didn't try to be a crowd pleaser. I realized you play the game for the fans, because without the fans, then there is no game. And I didn't take anything for granted. I just wanted to make the most of it. And I was a grown man that played a kid's game. A childhood dream just came true.
And you saw that childhood dream really come true and come to fruition when you were in the Baseball Hall of Fame in 2010. When you found out that you were being enshrined, did you just cry tears of joy?
I went to the grave sites of my mother and my grandmother after I left the gym, and I knelt on both their graves, and I prayed, and I started to tear a little bit as I spoke what I had to say, and I just wanted to thank both of them for the impact that they had in my life and for my upbringing. And I said this, I think that there's an opportunity, that something that's long overdue can happen, can occur today. And if it does, I hope that you're looking down and I made you proud.
So you go into the Hall of Fame as an expo instead of a club. How did you feel about this?
I was told that we were sat down and discussed what hat I would be wearing on my plaque, and it never really happened. I was told by some constituents of the Hall of Fame that we will at some point. I will recall going to the National Press Conference, and there's this huge placard of me in an Expos uniform. And I'm like, well, that's not a hat that I'm going to wear, at least not the one that I want to wear. And I told the president of the Hall of Fame that my preference of choice is going to be a Chicago Cub. I said that's where I feel was most impactful during my playing career. And we never sat down. So I'm at the Baseball Writers Awards dinner in New York City, and he approaches me and he says, "Andre, can I meet with you after the dinner? I want to sit down and talk to you about the cap that we want to put on your bust." I said, "Fine, it's in my room, and you can come up." Well, he comes to my room and he has a letter that he wants to present to me and have me look it over. And the letter simply stipulates that the Hall of Fame has made a decision based on the history of the game to put me in as a Montreal Expo. And I looked at Jeff Anderson, was his name. I said, "Jeff, this is against my wishes, and what happened to us sitting down and discussing this?" He said, "Well, the committee felt that, based on the history, you played 10 years in Montreal as opposed to 6 in Chicago." I said, "Well, that's all well and true." I said, "But I thought that I had some say-so in the matter, and it obviously appears that I don't have any say-so at all." And he says, "Well, how do you feel about this?" I said, "Well, it's already done. You're about to release it to the press. So one thing I don't want to do is make this a media event. This is the decision that the Hall is going to make. I just want you to know that this is not my decision. I would much preferably prefer a Cub was. But that's kind of how it played itself out. And we just moved on and moved forward from there.
Did that take away from the joy of the moment?
I wouldn't say it took away from the joy of the moment. Well, yeah, let me say it just, in a sense, didn't bode real well right away. I wasn't real excited or happy about it. But I had to look at it from the aspect of you're in the Hall of Fame. You know, that's first and foremost what's important. And I can address going forward with my speech on, you know, what my not preference is, but how I feel about the fan base and the importance that they played in my career.
You dedicated your speech to both your mom and your grandmother. When you were delivering it, did you feel them like in the atmosphere?
When I started my Hall of Fame speech, right after I got the election, I started on it the very next day. It's going to take a lot of work because you got to put it together and then shape it so that you can't thank everyone and you can't mention everything about your playing career.
21 years.
And about growing up. So you got to present it in a format that is going to be based on perhaps 20 minutes or so. So I started on it. I kind of put it in a form, a fashion that, okay, this is how I want it to be represented. And I would read it every day so that I would get it in my head and I didn't have to defer to it too much when I was at the podium. And I will say this, because I dedicated it to my grandmother and my mother, every point in time that I got to that section of it, I was in tears. And I cried every time I read it. And I got to the point of Hall of Fame induction day, and I could see everyone that I had invited and all of my family in the front row. And I just wanted to make that moment as special for them as much as it was for myself. And I said, God, please give me the strength to get through it. And of course, once I got to that particular part of the speech, I just paused. I paused and I gathered myself. And I saw that there were tears amongst my family. And I just smiled. And I was able to get through that final, probably 3 minutes of the speech itself. And for me, that was a proud moment.
Have you forgiven the Expos for their treatment?
I look back on how the treatment with the Expos was with by year 10 kind of playing itself out the way that it did, and then the following year the fan abuse, and I just said things happen in the game, and it's just based on business principles. And no, I just, okay, you gave me a start and you allowed me to set the groundwork for the second half of my career. And I applaud you for that. I have no ill or no bitter feelings because simply I just, got the opportunity to experience a different culture. Whether I'm going to be thrilled at the aspect of how things turned out, probably not. But I understand. It's business is business. You look out for you, I'm going to look out for me, and it's kind of how I kind of took things and just moved on.
Post baseball, you've made some great business moves with Mahogany Grill and your funeral home, Paradise Memorial Funeral Service. Why is it important for one to invest outside of their sport?
Well, I think that when you make investments, you can go so many different ways, and there's so many different avenues that you can pursue. I think you gotta think about what is going to be viable, what is going to be sufficient for you, and then what do you have a personal preference for? What is your liking?
What about with the funeral home? Is that something you brought up?
The funeral home, I started out being an investor initially in one, and then I was an investor in a different one. And it kind of fell into my lap, ownership-wise. And I felt that that was something different. I never really went into it with the anticipation of being the owner, operator. And then when it happened, okay, I had to converse with some people to really say to myself, is this really something I want to do? Because I was still employed. I was employed with the Miami Marlins, Florida Marlins, and later on the Chicago Cubs. And I had to say to myself, okay, this is where I'm at in my life. And I sat down with my two uncles who were both retired at the time, and we made the determination, okay, it's a community business, and the community needs it. And they wanted to run the day-to-day operations. So after consulting with the different pastors in the community, I just said, okay, God, if this is where I'm at this point in time in my life, so be it. Okay, I just know you got my back.
So CBS is creating a drama loosely based on the ownership of your funeral home. How did that come about?
Family business is what it's called. I was reached out to by CBS, who is buying the project, and they want to move forward with it. And we're still in sort of early stages, kind of trying to wrap up a contract. But it's going to be a fictional drama, and I don't know what direction they're going to go with it. But it's exciting to me because it's never been done before.
Definitely exciting. Wow. You have your hands in everything, not only a stellar baseball player or a businessman, but just an overall amazing human being. When looking back at your journey, how proud are you of yourself?
Well, I'm just, grateful. I'm humble. I'm as humble as you can be. And I just take everything in stride. And I was told at the outset, surround yourself with people, with individuals, who will make a difference in your life. And I sort of was past that torch, and now I have to do the same thing. Some of those people are still here with me. So I say that because that's what made me the human being that I am. And I'm just thankful for them that I was able to stay grounded and stay humble and realize and understand where it was I actually came from.
Mr. Dawson, thank you so much for this interview. It truly was an honor to be able to speak with you on your journey. Before I let you go, I did want to play a quick game of this or that. I'm going to give you two choices. You tell me which or who you prefer. Ready? Sweatsuit or dress suit?
Dress suit.
Work out in the gym or neighborhood job?
Work out in the gym.
Bo Jackson or Deion Sanders?
Bo Jackson.
Gum or sunflower seeds?
Oh, gum.
Center field or right field?
Right field.
Dodgers or Yankees?
Dodgers.
As a childhood team growing up. Sammy Sosa or Mark McGwire?
Sammy Sosa.
So more Miami legends. Uncle Luke or Trick Daddy?
Ooh, Uncle Luke.
Yeah! Miami Heat or Miami Dolphins?
Miami Heat.
Better not go with Dolphins. Jordan or LeBron?
Jordan.
Netflix or Blockbuster?
Old school. Netflix.
Netflix? I thought you were going to go Blockbuster. Last one. Hank Aaron or Willie Mays?
Thank you.
God rest his soul. Thank you so much, Mr. Dawson. It was an honor.
You threw some tough ones in
I
there.
know. I got you. I got to put you in the hot seat. Thank you so much.